Hello. Hey, I'm Kyle. I'm an alcoholic. Um, my sobriety date is March 2nd, 2011. My home group is Friday night, Hampton Young and Sober. Uh, um, we meet obviously Friday nights at 8:30. Um, and we're in breakout groups of 10. Um, in Virginia, we're actually one of the few meeting in person meetings. So if you're ever in Hampton, Virginia, feel free to break out with us for that. Um, I have the pleasure of being a sponsor, and I do have a sponsor. And if it wasn't for having a sponsor today, I'm not saying all through my sobriety, I'm saying like right now, today, um, confident I would not be sober. Um, I need a sponsor continuously, and all a sponsor is someone that got here before me. Nothing, there's nothing really more extravagant than that. Like a sponsor is somebody that got here before me, has been through the 12 steps, as it's mentioned in the first 164 pages of the big book. But the best advice I ever got looking for a sponsor was said, because I remember coming in the rooms and I was just like, what is this? Why are we going to meetings all the time? I have to get numbers of guys. That doesn't go with what I'm used to. Um, and I'm like, how do you find a sponsor? Somebody said, look for the hope that you're looking for. And that's what I did. And actually, funny enough, my first sponsor, I don't remember exactly what he said, but I was in Richmond at that time. And I just remember he started off his speech, I'm Steve, I'm an alcoholic. I'm from the area of Virginia where the men are men and the sheep are nervous. And I just remember that was hilarious. And I was like, I didn't remember anything else after that. Um, but I just remember him talking about the hope. And I actually had to beg him to be my sponsor because 3 months prior, he had to bury one of his sponsees that relapsed and died and had a very similar personality. And I didn't know any of this. And so I had to seriously, like, I had to ask him multiple times, will you be my sponsor? And I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, you be 100% honest with me. I don't care, if whatever you do, I care that you call me first before it. If you're going to go rob a bank, call me first. I want you to call me every day. Call me first. We're going to meet up. And he also said, I'm going to put into this what you put into this. And so it was never a doubt in my mind. If I gave this everything I got, I was desperate. I didn't even know I was like an alcoholic. I was desperate. But anyway, I kind of got off track. What uh when my first drink, let's get to that. Like the first time I ever like drank anything alcohol related. Um well, I first like took sips like at 8 years old because I remember downstairs in the basement there was like beers, but like the there was no compulsion to drink at that time. In fact, I was probably a late bloomer. Like I didn't really like get into drinking until like 16. But I remember my first drunk very clearly. Uh, um, I was 17. The Carter 3 had just come out. It was the night of the NBA draft. Um, and I just remember my buddy, I was living in Northern Virginia at the time, and my buddy we were going to go to this hookah bar that on Wednesday nights, it was like a club. They like moved the hookahs to the side, and there was a dance floor, and that's where all the drug deals went down. That's where all the, I mean, you got a bunch of high school kids, and you got your arm marked like you felt like you're in a real club. And so I remember him picking me up. His name was Jeff, and we were riding, and I'll never forget listening to every single song. Like, the more, it's crazy. I can forget what happened yesterday, but I can remember more and more about that first night getting drunk. I remember I snuck out of the basement, got in his car, with jamming to music. I remember he called out the first 20 picks of the NBA draft. I remember parking, and I remember him saying to me like, "Hey, I've got a surprise for us." And he pulls out out of the console, Jack Daniels, full bottle of Jack Daniels. Now, I had never taken Jack Daniels before this night, ever, ever, ever. I just remember he popped the top, took a quick swig, and passed it to me. I looked at it and I saw that it was from Tennessee. Well, I was born in Tennessee. And so I'm like, this is going to work. And so I proceed to down a quarter of the bottle. Never took Jack before. I don't have too many blackouts, but I browned out a lot. And that's kind of, browning out is when you kind of teleport unintentionally, where you just go in and out of consciousness, but your body, so you're in a new place, you're in a new time, and you don't know how you got there. So I just remember browning in and out. I remember the most effective thing that I did that night was not throw up in my friend's car. I remember trying to sneak back into the basement because there's like sliding glass doors, but it was an open field. There was nothing to sneak behind or anything. So I don't know, I walked up to the doors. It was crazy. And I thought I had like kind of like barely knocked on the door. I find out the next day that I like slammed my whole body on the door. And my brother was there, and he opened the door and he took me upstairs. And there was no extravagant moment of like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to drink. This is amazing. There was none of that. There was just this simple, quiet acceptance of just, I'm going to start drinking. I'm at the drinking age, now, this is what's going to happen. And I was never a everyday drinker. I was always the weekend warrior. I was always there for the party. I was always, and I have drugs in my story. I knew I was a pothead before I knew I was an alcoholic. I would just try and be this ultimate chemist and combine, drugs and alcohol so that I could get to that point where the ticker tape of self-hate every single day that I'd come home with would stop. And it was frustrating because it seems the bar is so low when you start out, and then it just gets higher and higher, and things get crazier and crazier. And it was really frustrating. So I found out my vicious cycle. There was a timing to my vicious cycle where I would it would take about 6 months to ruin my life, where I would be doing well in school or whatever, and then I wouldn't be showing up as much. And it always coincided with drinking somehow, and I didn't recognize this until later, where I would just be um, first I would be drinking on Friday nights because by that time I was in college. And Friday nights, of course, you're going to drink. Well, you're also going to drink on Saturday nights because why not? But I was going to college in DC at the time. And so of course all the bars have Thirsty Thursdays. So Thirsty Thursdays, you got the dollar beers, so you got Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But then I was going to a Catholic college that was wet. And so I had a bunch of Italians and Irishmen show me what day drinking was. So then Sunday in the afternoon when football was on, it was way appropriate to drink then. So and this is when Four Loko was Four Loko. So it was like way, way more intense. You could have like two Four Lokos, and that was making sense. And then, it also made sense because there was Monday Night Football too. So it'd be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But then inevitably on Tuesday and Wednesday, there were quizzes or tests. And in order to stay up for like that quiz or test the next day, well, I would just, I would keep like a little drink in like my in my dorm room. And all of a sudden I'd catch myself like I'm drinking all week. And I'd be, oh, no, 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 let me dial that back. Let me dial that back. Let me just smoke some weed and I'll be good, you know? And it's funny enough, ever since that I was going to 5D before lockdown, and it was so awesome to see the deaf community being represented. Just because I used to get so messed up with. I have a bunch of deaf friends, and they actually gave me a nickname. It's Kyle, and if you don't, it means, yeah, it means you get tore up. Um, you get messed up, and uh, that nickname came from me just always being messed up all the time. And um, I remember one time I was so desperate to get to like a party because I just wanted to feel that escape. I wanted that moment where I didn't have to think anymore about all of the things that I was doing wrong. And I didn't want to have to think anymore of any of the issues or like the bad relationships or the torn, family life that I was living. And so I remember my friend Joker, he called, he texted me and he was like, hey, you should come over. We're going to, I've got my buddy from New York. We're going to have a good time. And I was so desperate. I was ready to drive like 90 minutes away and I didn't have the directions. And again, this is in the days of like MapQuest. And I was like, just tell me your address. And he was refused to give me address, but he would give me directions. Well, I would get the text messages late, so I had to keep turning around. And this is stone cold sober. I called a deaf person. Just think about that for a second. And he yelled at me over the phone and said, text me, motherfucker. And then kept it moving and texted me. And I remember getting there and I didn't realize that was unnatural until I got sober. Oh, I think I just told a story I hadn't told Peter before. Um, but anyway, yeah, like I wanted to get messed up. And what I also remember was coming home from parties and cursing myself out in the mirror because everybody that I always met was always like, man, you have so much potential. You have such great potential. Man, all you have so much you can do. I remember, oh my gosh, I remember my chemistry teacher saying, man, Kyle, you know, we learned about energy today, and you have so much potential energy, and you just need to turn it into kinetic energy. And I didn't know how to do that. I'm like, where do I figure that out? Where's this book of life where somebody tells me what to do? Just tell me what to do and I'll try and go do it. And that's a complete lie that I told myself. Yeah, just tell me what to do. And people say, hey, just show up. And I'd be like, okay, but I've got some things I feel this way about this stuff. So I can't really show up like right now. But once I feel better, I'll be okay. And all of those feelings buried me because I thought those feelings were reality. And even to today, there can be crazy feelings of what's going on. I had a craziest day yesterday, and all of the feelings, every range of emotion hit at every part of the day. And if feelings were facts, I would be depressed in bed right now from it. And thank goodness for this program that there's a process that can save my life. So, how am I doing on time? Okay, cool. All right. So the that kind of process of like bringing people's hopes up and then just destroying everything was like my constant, lazy Susan of my life. Like I would just turn around and every 6 months I would just ruin everything and I would bounce back and forth between my mom and my dad's house. And I would just be going off doing crazy stuff. And I got a couple of possession charges. And there was nothing in my family that I could blame, truly blame that like, oh, they did this to me. Now, there's a lot of things that I claimed. I was like, oh, my mom is way too ADD and she's from a different country and she doesn't understand. And my dad is a business guy and he doesn't understand me at all. And he's just there, he just wants to support me in that way. My brother, he just wants to be the black sheep and take all of the attention. And really, I lived in an amazing home with very supportive parents, with a very supporting family. And it was literally all of the actions that I did that I have to take responsibility for. And it was in the program that I found that out. So I remember my bottom, I had, I was at this one party and the drugs and alcohol basically didn't work. And it was the first time in my life where like I was trying to get as drunk and as high as possible and I just couldn't. And it scared the crap out of me. And my parents were like, either you get kicked out, and this was like the third time of getting kicked out. Either you get kicked out of the house and it would be for real and you'd be on the street, or you go to rehab. And I didn't go to rehab because I was like, ooh, I want to get sober. I didn't even go to rehab because I was like, oh no, I'm going to get kicked out. I already knew where I was going to stay. I went to rehab because my parents were divorced, and the only thing that they agreed upon in the past decade was that I should go to rehab. And that scared the crap out of me. And so I went. And in rehab, I got my first gift of real desperation. I found out that science had proven I was screwed, that I had drank and drugged so much that everything that I felt in the back of my brain was disconnected from the decision maker in the front of my brain, and that there was nothing that I could think of to make those connections work. And there was nothing that I could do personally that I was just like, oh, I'm going to come up with a good idea to reconnect my brain. And I remember feeling like I was completely screwed. And I found out later that I really was, and that I still to this day am, that I could not rewire my brain for the life of me. But there is this beautiful thing called neuroplasticity. Um, Neuroplasticity is just the rewiring of one's brain. But if the problem is in my head, I can't come up with the ideas to rewire my own brain. So I had to take suggestions. So it was the first time that science had proven that I can't think myself into a better way of living. I have to live myself into a better way of thinking. In this process, I mean, 2011 was a magical year. It was unbelievable. I mean, I went to work. I knew, I didn't even know I was an alcoholic. I just knew that whatever life that I had wasn't it. And I had tried other programs and they didn't work. And I knew that I had a like if I drank one drink, I would drink another. And I remember my first sponsor, he was like, are you an alcoholic? And I half lied. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm an alcoholic. And he's like, okay, I can work with that. He's like, do you have a higher power? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, great. How's that working for you? And I had no answer. And it was the first time that I didn't give some kind of bullshit answer. And what I found out is that this program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the whole point of it, of going through the steps, like I don't have to determine exactly what my higher power is. The whole purpose of the 12 steps is to gain it throughout the process. In fact, that's the whole process, is that, you're, by going through the steps, by just doing the action, you get to find out what your higher power is. And I didn't find that out until the third year. So all you new people, literally just going through the steps, you don't have to figure out that there's a higher power. I was able to find it out through going through the steps, and it was amazing. And my view of what my higher power is has changed. I mean, the person that taught me probably the most about my higher power was an atheist. And he was 27 years sober. He died sober. And I just remember him talking about the program. And he said, man, there's so much room for people to have a higher power as an atheist, because he was the first one that said, you don't need God to get sober. And I was like, wow. And he's like, yeah, I mean, he simply said, Kyle, do you believe in principles? And I was like, well, yeah. And he was like, okay, are principles by themselves perfect? And I was like, yeah, they are. I mean, the principle of kindness, kindness is not 50% kindness. When you say the word kindness, people understand what that is. Harmony. bringing harmony to a situation. There's, you don't bring 50% harmony. You don't think of harmony as something that's 50%. It's perfect in and of itself. And so he said, well, all I simply do is believe in principles. And all you simply do is just call all of them God. And so we're looking towards the same thing. And I was like, oh, that's deep. That's excellent. I like it. And then it was reconfirmed when I looked into 12 and 12. And it took me a while when I first went through the steps. My sponsor, he didn't go exactly as it said in the big book. And that was okay. That's what I needed at the time. And it wasn't until 3 years in that I had gotten content. And that's the worst thing that you can do with sobriety that I knew I've done many a times, where I just get content. I'm okay to going to these meetings. I'm all right doing these things. And somebody said once, you're doing your sobriety well when it feels uncomfortable, because comfort means I'm not growing. But when I'm uncomfortable, I'm growing. And he also said service work should be inconvenient. And if it's not inconvenient, you're not really sacrificing anything to do that service. And I was like, oh, that hurts. I want things to be convenient. I use convenient language. I know now I probably use more things in the program to justify my alcoholic actions that sound like I'm doing sobriety, right? Oh, I really need to take some rest and take some time. And really all it is my alcoholism, using my intelligence to justify it. So I know that, with this program, it's amazing. I urge everybody to go through the steps with a sponsor, as it says in the first 164 pages of the big book. Get real stupid with this program, because us smart ones get buried all the time. And if you just get stupid and actually just do it, it's unbelievable what shows up. I don't know what the next right thing is. And I don't even know if I'm doing the next thing right, but I know I can show up for it. And I know the difference between positive and negative now. And I try to do the positive things in my life and show up for that. My day yesterday consisted of me getting sick, my wife getting bit by my dog, and another sponsee telling me that he has cancer for the second time. And it was a crazy day of showing up, that I had to show up through all of that. And I was frustrated about it, and I was angry about it. And I was able to live in that day and be in that day and be supportive in that day, and then show up again today and go back to work. And that's the beauty of this program, is that I do not have to prepare my life for anything. My sponsor says to me all the time, Kyle, just imagine if you're in the perfect place, in the perfect time, like all of us are here right now, and we need to be here. What is there to worry about? If we're supposed to be here with each other, what is there to worry about? Is there any worry if in this very moment, if I'm in the perfect place to be in a better spot in my life? And that's kind of how my higher power works for me. So anyway, Peter, thanks for asking me to share. Thanks for you guys listening to me ramble on. I appreciate all of you here.